Well, hello there, my name is Vladimir, welcome to my home studio. Today we are comparing the Boss MS3 against Line 6 HX Effects. We'll compare the features, connectivity, user experience, the effects, all kind of stuff, and at the end of the video I'll give you my review, verdict, 2 cents, seal of approval, something like that. First of all, please forgive me for the fact that I just cannot make the screen of the MS3 to be visible on this camera with the lighting setup and everything I have without making everything else in this shot, this camera, be completely dark and unusable basically. So you'll have to just trust me when I say what's going on this thing. And speaking of displays, the Line 6 HX Effects has 6 of them. These kind of, I think they're called scribble strips, and these are really nice. They function or they do various things depending on what mode you are in, and it's just really cool that you can see, for example, what preset you're going for next. And if we go to the mode, you can see different kind of pieces of that certain preset here as well, and you can engage or disengage them separately. So that's really nice. And overall it's a clean look. There's few buttons over here that go to various menus. This thing rotates and you can also click it to perform functions. What else? Buttons to browse. If we go here, for example, you can see here that we can navigate through these. Then there are these different buttons to adjust stuff as well, or rotating switches. So yeah, very clean layout and also very cool looking layout, like their colors and lights and blinking things and small displays and all that kind of stuff, and it just looks like a modern user interface. The MS3 has a maybe more traditional kind of loop switcher look, and again for foot switches then there's the memory/manual button, pretty much the same as on Helix FX as well. And again 3 rotating switches, these cannot be pressed. Then there's 5 different buttons, and with combination of these you navigate through stuff. No kind of mini displays or capacitive touch or however it's called, anything like that. But even though you get 3 less foot switches on the MS3, it's also physically literally half the size of the HX Effects. So that might be something you want to take into account as well. Connectivity wise, these units are surprisingly similar. On the input-output side, the HX Effects has a stereo in and stereo out. The MS3 has just mono in but stereo out. The MS3 has 3 separate loops for your pedals or the effects loop of the amp, while the HX Effects has only 2. The HX Effects has 2 kind of expression control/control out input outputs, and the MS3 has 2 expression control inputs and a single separate kind of control output. So for example, you could plug in 1 expression pedal and 1 external foot switch into the HX Effects, and you could plug those same things into the MS3 as well, but you could also switch the channels on your amp with the MS3. If you want to switch channels on your amp using the control out on the HX Effects, obviously you are using one of those. So MS3 has 1 more kind of connectivity options that way. The HX Effects has both MIDI in and MIDI out, which means you can control the whole thing externally if you want to, and the MS3 has just MIDI out. Both of the units have a USB connection as well, and you can plug them into a Mac or PC and download the app from the company's website to adjust presets, effects, stuff like that. What's interesting is that both of the units also have something similar effects wise, because Boss, well, you know Boss, they have a huge lineage of pedals and effects from over 40 years. But Line 6 also has a bunch of kind of legacy effects from the M series, the green, I think it's called DL4, and that series of units as well. And both of these units host all of those effects as well, so that's really cool. I think the HX Effects also has all of the effects of the M series units. You know, I think the biggest one was called M13 with crazy amount of buttons and stuff like that. So effects wise, both of the units kind of pay homage to the company's histories, which is kind of cool. The HX Effects also has a bunch of effects that are specifically created for the Helix series, and I haven't been able to confirm this from anywhere properly, but I think the Boss MS3 hosts the effects from the Boss GT series, like GT8, GT10 and so on, which means they are good quality effects and also contain craziest stuff like the Slicer and Terra Echo and stuff like that Boss is known for basically. I gave quite a lot of thought effects wise how to compare these two, because the kind of array of effects these both have are very different and there aren't too many similar sounding effects in them, to be honest. Having said that, let's compare a few of the things these units do share. We'll go for a classic Tube Screamer sound and then for some sort of modulated delay at least. And I have this funky looking setup where from the guitar I'm going into the MXR AB box, and here I can select to which unit I'm going. And because I didn't have any kind of box that would summarize two signals into mono, I kind of rewired this one. So basically these two inputs summarize into mono, but having the both units plugged in at the same time caused some tone loss, so I will be unplugging the whatever unit I'm not using at the time from here just to give it a fair comparison. And from the breakout box we are going into the clean channel of my Rev Dynamis, set completely clean, no reverb, anything like that. Here's the clean sound on both of the devices, so basically everything is bypassed. And then for the effects, here's the valve driver, which I assume is the same thing as a Tube Screamer, so the HX Effects. On the MS3 I was using something called T-Screamer, which it's self-explanatory. Is that how you pronounce it? I think it is. Moving on to the delay, on the MS3 I'm using something called Modulate Delay. Moving on to something pretty extreme that the other unit doesn't have, the HX Effects has this thing called Searchlights, which is a really ambient delay reverb thing. The MS3 has something called Terra Echo, which is a Boss signature thing, sounds like this. I'm not going to do a crazy amount of kind of effects comparison on these because they are really different with the kind of stuff they have in them, and comparing kind of different effects to each other is kind of pointless. I think that if you are interested in either of the units or trying to decide between the two, watch this video for the kind of overall comparison of the features and usability and stuff like that. And if you prefer one or another, go and check out some videos about that unit just to hear what kind of effects are there, and maybe that might help you to make the decision. I have used both units in a recording situation and also in a band setting as well, where I was also controlling my Rev Dynamis, switching presets on that and stuff like that. And I feel I have a pretty good grasp on both of the units, what they are like to use and how they sound and the possible issues they might have as well. So on the sides I'm going to write what that unit is better at, starting with the build quality, and the point goes to the Boss MS3. Boss is the boss making super durable hardware. Everything feels really high quality. The buttons, the switches and the metallic input and output jacks. The unit feels like it's going to last you a long time. The HX effects isn't bad by no means. The foot switches feel good, the buttons feel okay, but I'm never a fan of the plastic input and output jacks. They're just more prone to breaking, and I also know that the whole Helix series has had some hardware issues. Just recently a friend of mine had his Helix LT breakdown, or the volume control on the pedal broke down, and apparently that's a common issue with those units. So the point for the hardware quality definitely goes to Boss. The MS3 also gets the point for the size of the unit, and while I know it means kind of less buttons or less foot switches, it's not half of the foot switches of the HX effects, but it's the half of the size, and you can fit few pedals over here. With this pedal board you cannot fit anything over there, so the MS3 gets a point for that. The HX effects definitely wins in the user interface or user experience category. It's just on a completely different level usability wise. The kind of capacitive touch, how they use all six displays, I'm good at math, 6 displays, and how everything's kind of laid out. It's just a completely different user experience compared to this small display over here. While the MS3 does have these kind of indicator lights that help to see what's going on, this feels kind of an older user interface compared to this one. This is fun and kind of pretty intuitive, maybe besides few things here and there. It's just much faster to browse around and search for effects and check out what's going on with the preset and stuff like that. The MS3 isn't bad by no means, but there's certainly a higher learning curve. The HX effects just feels much more modern to use. I have also spent a lot of time with the desktop apps because for me it's just more fun to control everything with a computer, it's just faster. And there the point goes to MS3, but only slightly. I think the app they provide with the MS3 is just much cleaner, and I like the fact that, for example, when you see a graphic EQ, you see it like this instead of lines like this, and somehow it's just easier to understand. You can for example do like a V curve on that, but it's not the same on the Helix effects because they went for the same user interface as on the big units like the Helix itself and the Helix LT. So The desktop app comparison goes slightly to Boss, but it's not a huge difference, to be honest. The MS3 has much cleaner signal, especially when using the loops. There's a separate video on my channel where I'm telling you why I'm returning the HXFX, and the reason is because the loops just suck out the tone quite a bit. There's something going on with the impedance / buffering of those loops and even the input and output, and that was a true bummer because I was really excited about this unit. But yeah, the MS3 retains your tone perfectly, and I cannot say the same about the HXFX. Whether the loss of signal feels major or a really insignificant thing to you, I cannot help you with that question. You need to try that out with your own setup. For me, it was a too drastic difference, especially when I absolutely love the sound of that amp. I know that already really well. I don't want it to have anything that will kind of destroy that, because the guitar and the amp are the foundations of my sound, and all of this is just extra. I don't want anything that will be kind of degrading that tone. The MS3 also offers a bit more kind of MIDI controllability wise. On the HXFX you can only send program changes per preset, and that's it. At least I wasn't able to find any other way to send MIDI commands on this, for example via button on a snapshot or anything like that. I wasn't able to do that. And on the HXFX it's also limited so that the preset number 4 sends the program change number 4, and you cannot change that, it just sends that one. On the MS3 you can configure any preset to send any program change. So if you have, for example, 20 presets, you don't have to program 20 presets in your amp as well. You can use 3 and send any of those 3 depending on what preset you are using. The HXFX definitely offers you more ways to kind of route your effects. For example, you can split the signal and run 2 delays in parallel before you summarize them. You cannot do that on the MS3, it's just one linear signal path and that's it. And to me at least, the HXFX offers more exciting selection of different effects. The crazy delays and all the overdrives and stuff like that they go for, I find them more exciting than what's going on the MS3. The effects on the MS3 are fine and they're good sounding, but the HXFX is more kind of an inspiration machine, for lack of a better term. Overall, the MS3 feels like a great tool that will get the job done. It won't affect your signal or anything like that, and it's Boss quality, so you kind of know what you're getting. It's just really well built and it sounds good, but it feels like a product from a well-established company, and it kind of seems to lack that sort of edge, to be honest. On the other hand, the HXFX has this cool UI, flashy lights, the 6 displays and stuff like that, and the cool effects that apply especially to the kind of worship musicians apparently, because many of them seem to be using these things, and it's just kind of a cool product. But at the same time it also fails to deliver on the hardware quality. To me at least, the fact that it sucks tone so much is a big issue, and I don't trust the hardware on this unit as much as I trust it on the MS3, and unfortunately Line 6 Helix series doesn't have the best reputation kind of durability wise. At least my friends have had pretty kind of mixed experiences with the whole thing. And that concludes the comparison between the Boss MS3 and the Line 6 HXFX. Hopefully this video gives you some idea of the strengths and weaknesses of both of the units and kind of helps you to decide which one to get perhaps. And my choice is the Boss MS3 just for the fact that it doesn't mess up with the signal of my awesome amp. And to be honest, I don't need that many different effects. I mean, it's super fun to play with everything that's happening on the HXFX, but at the end of the day I need like a couple of delays, maybe a boost and something like that. Plus I have awesome overdrive pedals that I use, and the loops on the MS3 handle those better. But that's just a personal choice. If I could build my dream unit, I would have the effects or the kind of excitement, let's put it that way, of the Helix effects and the user interface, but the build quality of the MS3 and the signal quality Unfortunately, that unit does not exist yet, so I'll keep waiting. I also have to mention that I was really bummed out by the fact that the HX effects had the issues it has. Again, it's something that you might not really care about as much. I have friends who use the HX effects and are completely happy with that, and they don't notice the same issues. So maybe I have a faulty unit, or maybe just the fact that that's one of the most kind of dynamic and open sounding amps I've ever played. That makes the difference sound so drastic, and if you have some other amp, maybe it's something you don't really care about. I think it's time to wrap up. Thanks for watching this video. If you found this video helpful, interesting, exciting, anything like that, please consider giving it a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below, let me know what you think, and let's be friendly to each other as always. If you want to support what I do, you can get yourself a Catpic Studios t-shirt, links below in the description. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell as well. And that should be it. Thanks for watching. I shall see you next time.